Hi everyone, this is Donna and welcome to the Whimsy Stamps channel. I'm sharing two cards today that I made inspired by kind of pop art. I'll be using some newly released Whimsy Stamps products to create my projects. So I'll be using two of the girls from the newly released Gossip Holiday Girl stamp set, and that set does come with dies. I will also be using the background comic book cover cling stamp, which is perfect for an A2 size background. To get started on my cards, I'm going to stamp the background first, and I have a piece of Bristol Smooth cardstock inside my MISTI. I have treated the panel with anti-static powder, and then I'm using VersaFine Onyx Black ink to ink up my background stamp, and I'll go ahead and stamp that down onto my paper. Now this is a rather large background stamp, and there are several parts that are solid, so I'm just making sure that I have the entire stamp inked up pretty well, and then I can go ahead and stamp that down. You can double stamp this image, but I decided I'm just going to heat set the image with black embossing powder. Now off screen I do create a second panel of the background image so that I end up with two different cards. They're similar in design, but they differ in color choices. So for me, when I think of pop art, I think of kind of two distinct color combinations. And the first one is kind of like that superhero with the yellow and the red and the blue. And then the other one is like the pink and the teal with the yellow color choice. For the background of this first card, I'm using my Zig Clean Color Real Brush Markers. And I am using yellow, and I'll cover the entire panel. And for the second one, I will use a teal marker for that background. So while I'm coloring, I'll just quickly mention about pop art. So if you're not familiar what pop art is, it was a movement that began back in United Kingdom back in the 50s, and it kind of hit its prime here in America in the 60s. It is kind of based on pop culture, as the name implies, and when I think of pop art, I think of Andy Warhol and that Marilyn Monroe piece that he did. So that's kind of the inspiration behind these two cards for me. I've brought in this comic halftone stencil. Now this was previously released at Whimsy Stamps, but I think it paired perfectly with the background look that I was going for. And all I'm doing is adding the black dots with, I first used a finger dauber to cover the large portion of that area. And then in the little nooks and crannies, I guess, I've used a Q-tip just to get in there without leaving any of the smudges onto the white letters or to the white background. So there's what the first background looks like, and I will do the same thing with the second one. Now I didn't clean my stencil in between. I was just very careful to lay it down without moving it or shifting it. And then I will do the same thing again. I'll use a finger dauber and I'll just kind of go over the large portion of that area with the finger dauber. And then I come in again with a Q-tip just to kind of cover the small areas. And you do kind of want to be careful with this part because I had ink all over my fingers and I was so worried that I was going to get it across the white part of the panel. But anyway, it was fine. I do manage to keep it clean, and here's what the second background looks like. So I'm going to put those aside to dry, and while those are drying, I'm going to go into coloring of the images. Now I've stamped out my images onto a piece of Solar White 80-pound cardstock using Memento Tuxedo Black ink, And I did reach for my Copic markers to color in these images. I just find that I'm much quicker with Copics than any other medium. So for this first girl, she's going to be on that yellow background, and she kind of has that more of that superhero color combination going for her. Now, if you've ever watched my videos, you know that I love to color, and I tend to use a lot more markers for my blends than what I'm doing here. But when I pulled up pictures of pop art images, there's not a lot of shading. It's mostly one tone or maybe two tone colors. So I really wanted to keep within that look, and I opted not to add a lot of shading. So for the first time ever, you'll see me using 1 to maybe 3 shades of marker blends on these images. Okay, maybe 4, because I think at one point I forgot that was my intent. But anyway, I did create an earlier sample with this image in particular, and instead of coloring her skin with the flesh tone colors, I opted to do the pink dots in the skin, which is something you'll often see in pop art images. However, in this video, I do use flesh tone markers to color in both of the girls. So I'll finish coloring the Santa hat on this first image using some C markers. I'm just adding some slight shading beginning with C3 and then C1 and blending everything out with C00. For the second girl, I'm kind of going for that pink and teal look. So this one's hair is pink and her shirt will be yellow, and then the teal is in the background. Now I kind of wish I would have colored in her shirt teal and the background yellow, but it's okay in the end. I do like it. Okay, so here's where I've started on that first image with the pink dots for the flesh, and it just I just decided it wasn't working for me. Not on this day anyway. So I'll color in the skin using E13, E11, E00, and E000 for the highlight. And then I will fix those dots by first taking my colorless blender and trying to remove as much as possible by kind of pushing the ink out of the image. And then I'll just use the regular marker blend to color in that part of her arm. And after I die cut it, I will use a white gel pen just to kind of clean up the edges on the outside of that black line. And then here, once I do the shading, it's really hardly noticeable that those pink dots were there in the first place. Once I line up my coordinating dies with the images, I'll secure it with a piece of tape to hold it in place, and then I can run these through my die cutting machine. So I have the images placed onto the background, and this is essentially what the cards will look like. I do grab one of the pink markers and color in the comics part on the teal background, and a red marker for the yellow background. To finish off these two cards, I'll adhere them to a side folding A2 size card base, and I do add some foam adhesive onto the images before adding them to the center of my card. So that will do it for me today for my cards on this video. I appreciate you stopping by today and spending a little time with me. I hope you enjoyed watching this video and found it helpful. Let me know in the comments below what you think of that whole pop art movement or just that whole pop art genre, if it's something that you enjoy. For me personally, I love the brightness and the boldness of the colors. Anyway, that's all for me today. If you're new to the Whimsy Stamps channel, please consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell to be notified the next time we upload new content. Also, be sure to head on over to the Whimsy Stamps and Inspirations Facebook group, We share a ton of inspiration in there, as well as some challenges and chances to win prizes. Thank you so much for stopping by today, and I will see you next time.